Hi class. The subject I've chosen for my individual personality assessment is Fred Rogers. He's an American television host, author, producer, and minister. Created the television series Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. His program focused on children's emotional and social needs. He helped his viewers explore early childhood themes through his interaction with friends and neighbors, and through puppet stories set in the neighborhood of make-believe. Fred Rogers' personality traits are something to admire and respect. I'll be describing Fred using the essential traits known as the Big Five. The traits have been deemed the most essential when describing an individual's personality through lexical studies of the dictionary and through the statistical procedure, factor analysis. Each trait is represented on a continuum from low to high. First one, openness. He'd score high on this one. He found an original and creative way to connect with children, focusing on important life themes. Proof of Fred's openness is found in the extraordinary amount of content he created in his television program. It was definitely unique and original. The next trait, conscientiousness, he'd score high on this one as well. This trait comprises being dutiful, careful, rule-abiding, and self-discipline. While watching interviews of Fred and interviews of his close acquaintances, I learned how structured, organized, and disciplined he was. He had degrees in music composition and theology, became an ordained priest, went to graduate school to study child development, to study and learn from very highly regarded psychologists. Next one is extroversion. I'd say he'd be neutral on this one. Extroverts are described as cheerful, upbeat, optimistic, and excitement-seeking, and assertive. Fred is most of these things, but he also enjoys solitude, quiet time, and silence. Extroverts usually seek out stimulation, where Fred found great importance in silence and reflection. He stated real revelation comes through silence. Next trait is agreeableness. Fred is the ultimate example of an individual who would score high on this trait. His program promoted values of generosity, kindness, patience, civility, moral reasoning, tolerance, and self-worth. Neuroticism. Fred's the antithesis of neurotic. Fred's extremely positive, warm, friendly, and genuinely cares about every individual he interacts with. The next theory I'm going to use to describe Fred is Erik Erikson's psychosocial development. Much like Freud, Erikson believed that certain basic conflicts arise at various life stages. Erikson differed from Freud in that he believed personality development continues throughout the lifespan, including adulthood. The division between these theories begins at Erikson's fifth stage, identity versus identity confusion, where an individual finds personal values and goals that are meaningful. Fred's own loneliness and self-doubt taught him to be aware of the insecurities and needs of small children, where he learned about himself and life as a child. Much of it from his loving grandfather prepared him to help millions of young children later. The next crisis in Erikson's model is intimacy versus isolation. It's a task to find a life partner you can grow with, as opposed to being isolated. Fred and Joanne had 2 sons and were married for 51 years until his passing. As an individual moves into middle age, the next crisis is generativity versus stagnation. During this stage, the choice is to become passive or to turn your concern to generations behind you. Fred, with lots of money, could have retired. He had plenty of money for his family. Instead, he continued to create content to help children with difficulties and challenges of growing up. He created over 900 episodes, conducted interviews, and was interviewed many times over his life. The last stage and challenge occurs in old age, integrity versus despair. Individuals either develop wisdom from years of experience or they're regretful of past mistakes. Fred's been passing down wisdom to future generations for decades. Millions have grown up learning important lessons from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The perspective that describes Fred best is the humanistic perspective. Both he and Carl Rogers understood that one of the ways in which to create an environment of growth is to provide unconditional, positive regard. Fred ended each episode saying that there's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. Conditions of worth limit your freedom to act and think. If you think you are valuable only if your behavior conforms to certain rules or expectations, you may lose your ability to choose what to do. The goal is to see the world as it is, choose freely, and take complete responsibility for your actions. Thanks, Mr. Rogers.